It's 40 years since Britain joined the EU, and the debate about Britain's membership of the EU has been fierce throughout that period. And today we've had a discussion here at the EU Centre in London, at which we've talked about the effect on Britain of immigration from the EU into this country. And I have chaired a discussion which brought together 4 distinguished economists, in which we discussed the economic effects of that process.
And so what I think we've learned from the Eastern European experiment is the surprising flexibility of the UK labour market.
The concern that we're seeing right now is all focused on the ending of restrictions on Romanian and Bulgarian migrants at the end of the year. You know, the evidence suggests that large numbers are not necessarily going to come flooding in, but that is the sort of the public perception, and that is the problem that people see.
We have quite a lot of studies that show that there's surprisingly little effect on the employment rates or even the wage rates of native workers, although there may be some downward pressure at the bottom end. This reflects the UK's pretty flexible labour market, which migrants are coming into. We also know quite a bit about the fiscal costs and benefits, that is, the impact that they have on both the tax revenues and also on the welfare system. And we know that EU migrants make a significantly greater contribution to the exchequer than they cost in benefits and public services. I think it is quite reasonable to be concerned about the impact of migration on low-skilled workers in particular, but the evidence so far is that while there may be some negative impacts, they're pretty small, and they're actually dwarfed by the impact of other factors such as trade, globalization, and on the upside, the national minimum wage.
I'd like to go back to 2004 and the forecasting errors, which have been widely commented on, not just here, but generally in the political spectrum.
Do you think that the reason that the economy has benefited has actually been very much at the expense of exploited workers?
People who come from other countries are generally quite well educated, but they may be doing very skilled jobs, of course.
But I just think we need to somehow change the language. So we talk about the European labour market rather than the British labour market.
The migration debate in this country is often framed in terms of numbers. The government set itself this target of getting net migration down from the hundreds of thousands to the tens of thousands before the next election. The people discuss the optimum population size in the UK and the number of people that they think we can sustain. But that doesn't really connect with what people feel about migration. It's a very emotive issue, and when you talk about it in terms of numbers and hundreds of thousands, people switch off and they can't really engage with that. They just feel like it's too much. So our sense is that the debate needs to be reframed and talked about not so much in terms of costs and benefits and the economic benefits outweighing the social costs, but more in terms of fairness and sort of reframing this so that we're talking about the kind of fair migration system we need that values the contribution that migrants make, but that also recognises the responsibilities they have when they come here, and that requires them to put as much in as they're getting out.
I'd be grateful if the panel could help sort of dissect this issue.
Alex, should we go back to you on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the migration question here is seen as one of social impacts more than one of economic impacts in many cases.
So you've got to, in some sense, go through this, but you've always got to keep in mind the main gains from immigration go to the migrants.
I mean, what is about congestion? My response to this is always that there are costs to congestion, but they're not nearly as big as the cost of decongestion.
Our research showed that EU migrants are less likely to be unemployed than native-born citizens. They're less likely to claim long-term sickness or disability benefits. It really dispelled the idea that migrants come here to claim benefits. They're here to work. A lot of them are in high-skilled professions like financial and business services. They make a huge contribution to the UK economy, and actually we need these migrants coming in to keep the deficit down and to keep economic growth going forward.
So is it a net plus?
I mean, we think so, yes. So if you didn't have migration coming into the country, the working age population would decline, and that would pose a huge burden on the state.
Vicky wants to make a very quick
just
point.
One issue on employing people and what it means also for companies. I mean, I think if we do believe that the fact that there are all these people who come in from Europe and elsewhere around, and they can do various jobs and they can do them relatively cheaply, even though the benefit perhaps because it's better than what it would have been back home, and they have jobs which they wouldn't have had. It has changed the relative cost of capital and labour.
I'm in favour of migration, absolutely. Free movement must be the sort of bedrock of
having a single European market. And I think if you don't have that, then you've got serious issues. Now, we talk, of course, about free movement of labour, but there are still complications. First of all, as I suggested, language is an issue. Second, there are still big differences in qualifications across, so you don't actually have exact free movement. If you look at the legal profession, for example, those are the areas where it does not happen as much as it should do. That needs to be evened out, but there are also issues of qualifications further below the sort of high-level professional ones, which can act as deterrents for people to move.
You cannot generalise about immigrants from outside the European Union. They're all over the place, and diversity is remarkable.
Well, that's immigration from outside the EU is a whole other area, I'm sure. We've only concerned ourselves from within the EU. I think that is our time up.